I wanted to talk about Space Invaders because I love Space Invaders, and I don't think a lot of people have. I don't know. I haven't checked online if somebody has done a deep dive in like how they understand the game design in Space Invaders. But even if they have, and even if it's good, I think this is one of those subjects where personal points of view would still contribute. We don't have a lot of final words about this early era of video games, so it's still open to analysis and interpretation, I think. So I want to talk about a lot of things that I love about Space Invaders. Um, so I was thinking about this today. Before this showed up, as far as I know, perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't think there's ever been a shooting game, a shooting video game where so many rules. Well, first of all, the statement, I don't think there's ever been in any other shooting video game, perhaps is correct, but even if there is, where so many foundational aspects of shooting something have been elucidated all at once, I think actually it's quite understandable why Space Invaders was a revolution and started kind of video games on the whole, at least arcade games. Because it's kind of brilliant that all of the stuff that is in here somebody came up with on their own. I mean, their crew and their team, without any reference to nothing else humanity had made up to that point. A lot has been said about the fact that like the invaders speed up because you destroy sprites and that speeds up the code. So like the natural evolution of that. But I don't even want. I want to go into a lot of other things. I want to go into the structures in front of you and how they get damaged. Like that's insane. That's an insane solution for the era. I think they're made out of tiles, small like 8x8 tiles, and they get destroyed with like, they don't get destroyed tile per tile in a clean way. They create this little mess, this little granular mess, which I think is very evocative for the era, for the age, and plays very well versus the sprites of the enemies and your sprite. Your sprite seems to belong, not just because of the color, but because of the geometry and shape, with the more realistic, the more, it's not realistic, but like, in video games, when things are on the grid, they are very gamey, because they talk to the language. You see 8x8 tiles, you things move by 8x8 bits, you understand the granularity of the thing. Here we have a few different granularities, because of how that ground has been, the covers have been conveyed. If you can look at the very thin line of your shot, it seems to belong in a different resolution than the chunky bits in front of us that we can also destroy. So, talking about early strategies, you can make a hole through your bulwarks or your supports and shoot the enemies through them. So I can already imagine the developers of this video game, this early arcade game, testing new things, and seeing the differences it makes to the code, and then making small alterations to make the video game more complex and more emergently interesting. I find that so fascinating for something like Space Invaders. Like being able to make, do you see this? Like my shots passing right by. This must have been such a engrossing fantasy the moment you did it for the first time. This is like the first video game, right? In a certain sense. So figuring out strats, we call them today. Or the other strat, which is destroying vertical lines of Space Invaders, because the idea is they will take longer to wrap at the corners, so they will come down. Geez, that one doesn't want to die. They will come down slower. So now that we've destroyed that one, they will wrap. Ooh, can we do the skill shot? The skill shot by itself is like the first thing you would brag to your friends about, like, I can do that. And it's so exciting. Space Invaders is so exciting to me. I'm not even gonna go into how iconic and beautiful the sprites are. Like, they're on t-shirts, they're on mugs, they're on everything. But actually, commerce aside, they are in everybody's imagination that played this game. Oh, I can do that. The old school UFO shaped flying saucer at the top. So the logic of this game is a gem. What enemy shoots at you, and what kind of shot, and which shots can you counter by shooting back at them, versus which you can. I think you can counter everything, right? It's been a while. I don't remember actually. Let's try. Let's experiment. Can we counter all types of shots? And they shoot from like their center, which is quite good. See, down here, the range is so short, it becomes really desperate. You have to really move. This was the first game where people have to lead their shots, like you play Quake or you shoot a rocket at somebody. This is the first game that taught those skills, if you're not in the military at least. So, leading shots, first time. There's no curvature at the shots. They could have done that. Like, it's going to be so easy if you shoot and you move, you give a little, like a couple of pixels curve to the shot, not curve, like actually that would be angle to the shot. That would be cool as well. But actually, I think it's very important in this game that there are no power-ups. The concept didn't exist yet. That you get one shot, the shot is straight, it goes straight up to the top. And there is a very interesting mechanic with it actually. But before I go into the mechanics, why is the shot going straight to the top? Good, because this is artillery. You don't want to look where you shot. You just want to, you make the calculation pre-shot, like in the military. You pull the trigger when you know it's going to work, and then you move. It's not a game about looking at your shot. You're going to shoot a lot, and you want to make good shots. And part of the fascination and skill play of this game is when you're good, you don't waste your shots. You're very economic. Not me. I don't play Space Invaders every day, but I play other more complicated shoot 'em up games that came out of this. As you can see, my hitbox is big, so I don't know how to play this game. But yeah. So the shot has to be straight because the shot is you don't have to trace it. Also, very interesting. Only one shot on screen. So if I miss, that's a natural malus, not a bonus. I find that fascinating, which means also, if you shoot closer to you, you kind of rapid fire. If you wait for them to come closer to you, you can make holes in your own supports, as we said. You can kind of kill faster. So what are we learning about this? We learned that even from the first arcade game, in a sense, the few rules you put in place are actually very malleable. The timing and the logic of what happens when not just makes the game fun and makes the game parsable to the audience. It also describes that, like, that is the magic of making a video game. When you imagine a video game, even if you have a very good visualization memory, what is that? Very good visualization capacity, it's not going to come out necessarily as you visualize it, and that's good. I know this is kind of a banal point, but first you code a shot and then you shoot the shot and you're like, how many bullets can I shoot? And then you have a think. That's a difficult thing to come up with in the abstract. So the very few rules, the rules that we have here is so dynamic and generates scenarios in such a way that I think, like, coming from like designing a board game or even designing a tabletop RPG, which is a big part of the legacy and the history of our medium, like transferring rule sets from board games of all sorts into the real-time the real-time milieu of video games. So you make small rules and you experiment with them, and then by the identity and the personality of the game is in how you put the small timings and rules and logics together. I will never stop being fascinated about the fact that there is destructible terrain in the first video game, and that it looks so granular and so like convincing in this strange way. The beauty of the aesthetic, like I'm not like I can talk about an hour about why this look is so much more powerful than even a step forward, like 5 years later, with like the visual fidelity of the early 80s in the arcades. Why this still has a unique power to it because of the 1-bit colors and the very abstract space where you have to interpret everything a little bit like a cartoon characters in essence. The aliens have cute little eyes and they have little expressions with their, I don't know, proboscis and crab mouths, I don't know what they are, but the moment you add more color, the moment you add more rendering, you are stepping outside of the symbolic space into a representational space of some sort of heightened reality. This game instead could even be ASCII in a sense, like you could, the turret, for example, is so close to nothing, to barely even a symbol. The invaders, on the other hand, have a lot of personality, and that's very important. Like whoever made this game put all of their cartooning effort to in the right place. And you could even make a case that there is a bit of thematics to this, that the defense force seems kind of grounded by shape design, and the enemy force is a little bit wacky. The aliens look a little bit wacky. They don't look like, well, we don't know what aliens would look like, but in the popular imagination, the flying saucer passes above. So we have a tone dynamic here. We have like the aliens bringing the wacky and the cartoony, and the defending world bringing the granularity and the military milsim element of like make your shots count, and the movement being very feels military. So what do we learn from that? We learn that even the first video game had some accounting for, we're making a violent video game, and we need to convey these things, this very, very simple story with symbolics. And even in this violent video game, they found a way to soften the violence by making the aliens kind of cartoony, and like, I can't imagine these invaders invading the Earth and taking over, and with these graphics, and that being too bad of a situation, you know? But the moment you add more colors, the moment you add more resolution, and you can render the fantasy at a different, like, at a different level of representation, then you have other sorts of problems in your art direction. So I am I am an art director in the industry, so I look at this, and I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to like prop up an old video game just to say some words. I find the art direction here super robust. Often, I'm a pixel artist as well, so often I would go and draw some pixels, and I would start with like 1-bit, like black and white graphics, and they would be so robust and kind of supported by the contrast from the black background and whatever color, vibrant, saturated color you put on top. And the moment then you would step out of that arena of like the ZX Spectrum, and you would start to render more, even go to the Commodore 64, on the early Amiga, Atari ST, PC, IBMs. The moment you get 16 colors or 32 colors, you're in another realm. It still is with one foot in this symbolics, I would say, up to a further point of refinement, like higher resolution and true color, I would say. But the trade-off changes. Here we are not purely in the realm of symbolics, but half of it is cartoony and charming, and the other half has that kind of utilitarian aspect to it. What I find very interesting is also, it's a very early game, but like the high score premise, like you're playing this game to make that number higher, so when you stop playing, you're not going to put another coin in. This is a very, oh, you will, but it's the compulsion there is to show off to people that you got the high score. I mean, those are the limitations of the medium at the time, but there is something very pure and beautiful about a video game being about a number as well. And not necessarily, now we have graduated into this gamification of capitalism, where the video game we are presented is making our number go up, and the meta systems of making our number go up, which is very, very tiresome. A big conversation topic for another time. But here it's kind of raw and pure. I respect an arcade game that doesn't gives you one go. I don't remember actually. Let's find out. Can we put? I don't think we can pump more coins into this old game, right? If I die, it's gonna. Even if I put more coins in, I think I start from the beginning, or at least I lose my high score. Those are the rules, right? Let's find out. Game over. Can I continue? Yeah. See, it flashes. They knew what they were doing. I'm gonna check online who the creator of the game is. I'm very sorry that I don't remember at the top of my head, and I'll splice it in, or I'll write it on the screen at least. So, the skid shooting element of this game is very clear, but actually you could make the case that exactly that's where all of this comes from. Somebody goes, throw the plate goes in the sky, and then you lead the plate and you shoot, and you see it gloriously break into pieces in the air, much like this. I know that's just a frame of pop, but that's good enough in a certain case. in the context we're talking about. So the skill shooting element is the core of video games. That's where all of this comes from. It comes from you moving your character around, in this case only left and right, being able to shoot, and then making the internal calculation if the thing you're shooting at is going to move towards your shot or away from your shot. I find it fascinating that is still the core video game we play. This came out in 78, I think, 70, 76, 77, 78, I don't remember exactly. But you can go to Wikipedia about the actual details. The enthusiasm is what I want to convey to you about this game. So I find it fascinating that we still play this game where we lead a target and we move our guy or whatever we are. And that's the core DNA of the simplest thing you can do with an action game is move around and try to lead a target. I'm thinking about Atari Combat as well. I'm thinking about the very early, I guess if you want to go further back, and we should, because this is not the very first video game, I think this is the first arcade game, or at least the first arcade game that it wasn't electromechanical and took the world by storm. But if we go to Space War, the original vector scope or oscilloscope, I don't remember what it's called, like the original game on which asteroids then was, asteroids was derived from that, let's be real. Space War was two little vector spaceships, so it was versus with another human being. There was gravity wells, but you were still doing the same thing. You were pointing your sprite to the right direction, shooting and hoping to lead the shot and get the other guy. So, and actually we should look at Space War at some point as well. It's difficult to find good footage because Space War is very complicated as well. Space War is not a simple game, and Space Invaders is not a simple game. I guess that's my tagline. Simplicity is good, but I'm trying to make a different point here. There's non-apparent complication whenever you put even the barest, simplest systems together. So the simplest systems we're looking at here are advancing, corner wrapping invaders, character moving left to right, shooting, enemy shooting back at you, you can shot interplay between the shots. See, even all these small systems, there's gaps between the enemies, so you can get the shot to the UFO if you're very good without trying to go to the corner. Another way you could make this game even more complicated in a positive way, some sort of timer mechanism, so you are, I mean, there is a timer mechanism. See, you don't need to make this game better, it's already perfect. The more you kill the enemies, the quicker they will climb down, although you have some say in the formation that this happens. So there's always which in arcade games design is a very good thing to do, always an incentive to play fast. See, that's why historically it's good to look at very early video games, because you want to look at the impulse of the modern gamer to speedrun or to play fast. And you know, the meme of Sonic, I have to go fast. I grew up with Sonic 1. So, but actually going fast is inherent to the arcade game paradigm, because the faster you can get the consumer off of the machine, the faster you can get another one, or at least the first one's money again. Now, I don't consider those the dangers of capitalism there to be positive, more humorous than anything, but I do find it very interesting that even in kind of like that context, we found a way to incentivize fast play, not just because of these reasons, but because fast play, we found, is not just sick to look at and not just sick to reward with good score, but is the flow state of video games. Playing like this is not what this game wants you to do. This game wants you to mash, actually. It wants you to shoot every enemy, but it wants you to mash. It wants you to not waste any milliseconds before the first shot is done and the second shot appears. It actually wants you to go full auto. And it doesn't have a full auto button, yeah? So at the time, even pressing the button fast was a skill. Now that's a bad skill. Carpal tunnel syndrome is no good. But at the time we didn't know that people would get so addicted to video games, and we changed that. But the flow state is supported by mashing a button and playing super fast. So we talked a little bit about the aesthetic. We talked a little bit about the very simple systems that make this game beautiful and see, satisfaction. Satisfaction seeing that red 100 up there. Then again, I said that you shouldn't play slow. I guess a really good player probably would do something like this. I don't know how many how many UFOs pass. Well, that sucked. But I'll continue. So that's a good number of invaders to keep alive and see, do we get a lot of UFOs? $50. Now you're thinking, shouldn't he be good at Space Invaders to have all these thoughts about it? Actually, I don't play Space Invaders often. I look at it a lot. And I think about it a lot. I play Dodonpachi, I play modern shooters. But that doesn't mean... See, there is a point, and I very much recommend people that love video games to do this, to do historical analysis, or at least have a personal relationship with games even before your time. I'm almost 40. When this came out, I wasn't alive even. Why do I return to it and play things that aren't connected to my own nostalgia and unconnected to even like the artifice of pixel art? This is very basic, like why spend time with it? Because the more you go back to the beginning, to the seminal pieces of software that spawned this industry, you will find out they are actually brilliant. They're brilliantly made. They are made with love. They are made with ingenuity. And after a lifetime in this industry where you generate kind of like a cynicism about how product is made and how many corners are cut and the situations that generate like bad video games or mediocre video games in any case. And especially if you have ever been involved in making a video game where those frustrations come to the surface, it's very, very useful to go back to the beginning when nobody knew what they were doing and look at the pure creativity in the ambiguous space of video games when somebody was like, I could make you shoot a lot, like but perhaps I didn't have the sprite space or the RAM for that. But I'm actually not gonna let you do that because the better option for gameplay, which was not a term we had at the time, even if it should ever be a term, game feel, the logic of the game, the internal systems of reward and risk, in any case, that balance is upset by putting a lot of shots on the screen for this game. Not that people didn't make Invader clones where they actually, that's a very interesting point to end on this. So what is seminal software? This is a seminal piece of software. Anybody can agree with that, which means everybody afterwards in that ambiguous space of what is a video game, what is a product, where is the copyright limit of all this? Is this just like an extension of the hardware? Or should we cherish the developers? In that ambiguous space, people cloned this game. They stole it, they wanted to make money, and immediately we see the cynicism, the dialectics actually here of the situation where the seminal piece of software is adapted in a short amount of time by a lot of different people with cynical, or sometimes not cynical, or sometimes a mixture of desires. And what did they do? They tweaked and they messed with every variable that this game presents. And from that, not only the shoot 'em up came to be, but one could make the case that all arcade games came to be out of messing with what if the character moves faster, what if the character shoots more, what if there are no supports in front of you. And then we go to Galaga, what if the formation, the Space Invader formation, is kind of boring and we can do more. What if what if the screen scrolls? What if the player can move up and down? What if the player can go closer to one of their enemies and point blank them and then move up, back down? You can see like it explodes so quickly. Anybody that had come up with this game, actually that's bad grammar, had anybody else come up with this game, it would be the same. If Space Invaders didn't exist, it would be necessary to invent it. If humans didn't come up with Space Invaders, some other being that is still like physical and has to walk and has to like judge distances and say if I throw this ball over there, if it's gonna hit, they would come up with the same stuff. They would come up with this skill challenge of, can you shoot it as it's moving and while you're moving? It's like Tetris. The aliens would have come up with Tetris as well. So when the aliens come and they look at our mess, they might not bomb us because they'll see Tetris and they'll say, we are connected by spirit with whatever this sentience is. We also have Tetrominos and we also made this game. So they will go, oh yeah, and they also shot little Space Invaders. That's kind of ironic, but we recognize it. We recognize the kinetics of this kind of action. It's very human, this kind of action, and it spawned all the other video games. So whenever you see something so simple and you're like, let's say you're 16, 18, 20, 25, and you see this and you're like, it's cute, it's quaint, but like, what can I learn from this? Why should I would actually urge you to make a Space Invaders clone, or participate in making something like this, because you will find your own personal self-expression in tweaking these rules and tweaking these values. You might see that, like, oh, there's another Space Invaders in you, and it didn't take a lot to look at this. I'm shooting single pixels. It didn't take a lot for you to come up with it. You just needed to see the variables. You see the variables in front of your screen and change them. So that's what I have to say at the moment, at least, about Space Invaders. There's also the other stuff you can hear, and if you go and watch all the other stuff, like before there were computer monitor. Oh, that's very interesting actually. Unless I press one, it's not going to go into action. Modern arcade games would not be like that. So in the beginning there was no color for Space Invaders. On top of the screen they put some horizontal bars of colors, so as the invaders moved down, cellophane, you know, on top of the screen, as the invaders moved down they would get colorized by the band, which is crazy, but the game looks beautiful without that as well. I think this is a better version of Space Invaders than the rainbow colored end result with cellophane. But the cellophane was a solution for the anxiety of monochrome. Space War is very monochrome as well, but it's glowing and beautiful. Actually, this would probably be very glowing in the old phosphorus CRT screens that this probably ran on. I haven't seen a Space Invaders in the wild, I think, since I was a kid. I haven't gone, like, it's been a long time since I've tried to play this game to see how far I can go, to see if there's a very heavy difficulty curve. I would anticipate that there is some internal logic for AI to, it's not just the same game every screen, because I would anticipate the enemies will shoot more at you and they will move faster. That's the elements, the levers you can move, I think, in this game to make it harder as you go. But if you play well, I don't know if by today's standard this game really becomes Pac-Man. Pac-Man is quite hard still, or Donkey Kong. Perhaps I should try, perhaps one day I should try to do like a high score, check online, like what is a proper high score for Space Invaders, and see how close I can get, so I do not look down on this game in those terms. I don't look down on this game in any way, but perhaps playing it for score will give me extra insight actually, and make me learn to shoot better as well. I am very interested in that interaction when the shot passes very close or through the invaders. I think that's very exciting, even though it's a bad feeling because you missed that it's possible, that you can kind of graze a line of... Did you see that? Like, kind of kill them in the wrong order, like somehow that stride was a little bit in front or a little bit in back. I find that very interesting. All the little ways that this game becomes organic instead of completely... There is an element to the presentation that I find odd though. The invaders move... They don't move all at the same time, I think. I'm seeing some vertical, horizontal braking. This is not bad, it actually makes them feel like a little army. That is, but it does create a bit of visual tearing that I remember from playing this game when I was a kid as well. I wonder why the code is like that. I wonder how long the source, or at least like, let's say somebody writes Space Invaders as closely as they can again on Python or I don't know, whatever. I wonder how long that source would be to remake this game, all of it. So unless you move when the game starts, your turret doesn't come online. So you can just look at that. Let's do that. Kill me. The enemies have to line up with you as well. Like if you're in the middle between them, they can't really shoot you. So you can do this. So micro movements. I guess this game's going to be a game about micro movements if you wanted to get good at it. Yeah. Ah! That sucks. Okay. Those are my thoughts about Space Invaders. If you listen to this, thank you. I don't know who you are, but I appreciate you. I don't want to make content for anybody. I don't want to have a second job. I don't want to be on YouTube. But sometimes you have thoughts about things and you can shout them at the rooftops. I don't think anybody would really care. Ooh, look at this. You can't really get them in the corner until they make a turn. A small one, at least. Very, very interesting. Let's see. Yeah. So they wrap around well to the side of where I can go. Very interesting logic. I would never have expected that. Why did they code it like this? So yeah, you can shout your thoughts about Space Invaders from the rooftops, but I don't think anybody would really engage. And actually, I don't really mind if nobody engages, but it's good to know that there is at least a potentiality that somebody went, oh, interesting thought, thank you.